Hey friend, please subscribe and like the video. 1 second for you. A big deal for me. I never thought I would see my son's blood on his Sunday shirt. The first thing I noticed was the red stain spreading across his white collar as he lay half submerged in the muddy ditch off Highway 17. His suit jacket was torn, his knuckles scraped raw. For one terrible second, I thought he was gone. Then his lips moved. It was Gregory Dalton's men. He whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. He said, "My blood isn't good enough for his family." The sound of those words hollowed out something inside me. My knees hit the wet ground as I tried to lift his head. Rainwater mixed with blood ran down my hands. Noah's eyelids fluttered, then closed. I screamed his name, but all I heard was the echo of my own panic. I drove him to the emergency clinic myself, following the flashing red lights on the horizon like they were a promise. The nurse at the counter gasped when she saw the state he was in. While they worked on him, I sat in the hallway clutching his wallet and whispering prayers my mother used to say when my husband was sick. The same words came back like an old song, quiet, trembling, but full of hope. Hours later, when Noah finally woke up, his face was swollen and bruised. His eyes found mine through the bandages. "Mama," he murmured, "they pulled me from the car. 2 men. They said this was a warning from Gregory Dalton, the father of the woman my son had married against every whisper of town gossip. I felt anger boil through the fear, thick and steady like the summer air before a storm. I had seen cruelty before, but never aimed this directly at my family. Outside the window, the sky turned from gray to black, thunder rolling far away over the marshes. My son had nearly died for loving someone he wasn't supposed to love, and the man who ordered it all was still sitting comfortably in his mansion on the hill. That night, as Noah drifted into uneasy sleep, I sat beside his bed and made a silent promise to myself. Gregory Dalton might have money, power, and the law in his pocket, but he had no idea what a mother's anger could become when she was left with nothing to lose. The next morning, the sun rose over Savannah like nothing had happened. The air smelled of magnolia and wet asphalt. From my kitchen window, I watched the light fall across the backyard garden my late husband built before he passed away. It had been a quiet life. Early mornings, baking pies and biscuits for the farmer's market, feeding the hens that strutted around like they owned the place. But after last night, peace felt like a memory. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah's torn shirt and the terror in his face. Gregory Dalton's name had been whispered in Savannah for decades. He was the kind of man who built half the city and claimed the other half by fear. His construction empire owned streets, councilmen, and even a few judges. My son had fallen in love with his daughter Lila 2 years ago. She was bright, kind, and gentle. They met at a charity event downtown, and for a while I believed their love might bridge the gap between our two worlds. But money doesn't like equality. The Daltons made it clear they considered Noah a stain on their perfect image. A month before the wedding, Gregory called my son into his office and placed $50,000 on the table. "Walk away," he said. "Start fresh, somewhere else. Just not with my daughter." Noah refused. He told Gregory that love wasn't for sale, and Gregory, I suppose, didn't take rejection lightly. That morning, I decided one thing. If Gregory Dalton thought his wealth made him untouchable, I would remind him how dangerous it is to underestimate a mother who remembers everything. By noon, I couldn't sit still. I called my brother Thomas. He was 70 now, slower in step but still sharp as a blade. When I told him what happened, he didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'll be there in an hour." Thomas arrived carrying a leather briefcase that had seen more years than either of us cared to count. When he stepped into my kitchen, I felt the years roll back. He poured himself coffee, sat across from me, and listened while I explained everything. Noah's attack, Gregory's threat, and Lila's silence. When I was done, he leaned back and said, "Do you remember what Mama used to say, Viv?" The rich think poor folks don't pay attention. but we do. We watch. We remember our mother, Margaret Collins, had spent 30 years cleaning houses for men like Gregory's father. She'd seen things, contracts left on desks, money exchanged under the table, secrets whispered between men who thought servants were invisible. Before she died, she told us she kept notes, names, dates, deals that shouldn't have happened, all locked away in a metal box somewhere in the attic. I climbed up there that afternoon, the air thick with dust and heat. It took an hour to find the box, tarnished, dented, but still locked. Inside were old receipts and handwritten pages in Mama's neat cursive, proof of illegal land transfers and property fraud dating back to the Daltons' early empire. I looked at Thomas and felt my heart steady. Mama had left us the one weapon money couldn't buy: truth. Just past dusk, a car pulled into my driveway. Through the curtain, I saw Lila step out, her hair unkempt, her coral dress wrinkled from hours of crying. She looked nothing like the polished young woman I remembered from her wedding day. When I opened the door, she almost collapsed into my arms. "Mrs. Collins," she sobbed, "I'm so sorry." I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I guided her inside. Noah was sitting at the table, pale and bruised. When Lila saw him, she covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh my God, what did he do to you?" Noah didn't answer at first. Then he whispered, "Your father sent his men. He said my blood wasn't good enough." Lila froze. No, he wouldn't. He couldn't. But the truth was already in her eyes. She pulled an envelope from her purse and placed it on the table. Inside were printed emails, photographs, and a list of names. "I found these on his desk," she whispered. "He's been forcing families to sell their land for pennies. Those who refuse disappear." Thomas leaned forward, scanning the pages. "These are real," he muttered. "Receipts, transfers, he's laundering money through shell companies." Lila buried her face in her hands. "He'll destroy anyone who stands against him." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then he'll have to go through us first." 2 days later, another knock echoed through the house. When I opened the door, a man stood on the porch wearing a faded jacket and a hat pulled low. A long scar cut across his cheek. "Mrs. Collins," he said. "Name's Jonas Pike. I used to work for Gregory Dalton." Thomas stiffened. "What do you want?" Jonas hesitated. "I saw what they did to your boy." That wasn't the first time, but it should be the last. He opened a worn folder and placed it on the table. Inside were photographs, contracts, and payment receipts. "I kept copies," he said quietly. "Every dirty deal, every payoff. I didn't think it'd be for justice, but here we are." Thomas examined the documents. This could destroy him. Tax fraud, property theft, bribery, it's all here. I looked at Jonas. "Why bring this to us?" "Because Gregory won't suspect you," he said. "He thinks fear keeps people loyal. But fear turns to courage when you've got nothing left to lose." By the end of that week, our plan was in motion. We would lure Gregory to an abandoned rail depot on the edge of town. Jonas would tell him he'd handled the Collins family and had proof to deliver. Hidden cameras would record every word. Once we had his confession, Thomas would alert a journalist in Atlanta who had been waiting for years to expose Dalton's empire. That night, the depot was cloaked in fog. The air smelled of rust and rain. We hid behind a stack of crates, the flickering light of a single candle reflecting on Noah's bruised cheek. I could hear my heartbeat as Jonas's truck pulled up outside. Moments later, the heavy door creaked open. Gregory Dalton stepped inside, his expensive shoes echoing on the concrete. "Where are they?" he demanded. "In the back, sir," Jonas said evenly. "They won't be a problem anymore." Gregory laughed. "Good. Make sure the town knows what happens when people forget their place." Every word was being recorded. Then Jonas asked, "What about your daughter, sir?" "She's been asking questions." Gregory's jaw tightened. "Lila doesn't need to know what keeps her life comfortable. If she keeps prying, she'll end up like the rest of them." That was the moment the church bell from across town struck midnight, followed by the roar of engines outside. 3 cars sped down the gravel road. The doors burst open. Flashlights sliced through the darkness. "Gregory Dalton!" a voice shouted. "You're under arrest for multiple counts of fraud, assault, and conspiracy." Gregory froze. "You can't arrest me. You don't know who I am." One of the agents stepped forward. "We do, sir." And now, so does the rest of the country he tried to run. But 2 men tackled him to the ground. His shouts echoed through the depot, mingling with the thunder outside. I stood trembling but steady. When his eyes met mine, something in him cracked. "You," he spat. "You think you've won? This isn't about winning," I said. "It's about truth." "About the families you buried under your greed." Lila stepped from the shadows, tears streaming down her face. "You taught me that love could be controlled with money," she said. "I hope prison teaches you otherwise." The agents pulled him away, his curses fading into the night. 3 months later, Savannah woke to a different kind of morning. The clouds hung low, and for the first time in years, the air felt clean. Gregory Dalton's trial had ended the day before. He was sentenced to life in federal prison for fraud, extortion, and the violent crimes that haunted our town. His empire had collapsed like dust under rain. From his seized assets, the city built a new community clinic on the south side, the Rose Margaret Collins Center, named after my mother. It stood as a reminder that even the smallest voices could change something big. That morning, I was in my kitchen again, rolling dough for pies. The smell of cinnamon and butter filled the air. Noah came in wearing a white shirt, his bruises long-healed, his smile easy again. Lila followed, radiant in a pale yellow dress. She kissed my cheek and said, "They're opening the clinic today, Mama. We want you there." Later that afternoon, we stood beneath the old oak trees by the courthouse. The same journalist who had exposed Gregory asked, "Mrs. Collins, do you feel vindicated?" I thought for a moment, watching my son and daughter-in-law hand out fresh bread to families who had once been too afraid to speak. "It's not about vengeance," I said. "It's about justice. And about remembering that the truth may take its time, but it never loses its way." That night, I sat on my porch listening to the crickets, the stars glimmering above the quiet streets of Savannah, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe, knowing we had chosen truth over fear and love over silence.